This is a list of all of the Supremes that we've learned about in American Horror Story. Now, this is not a comprehensive list because we don't know who every single Supreme has been, but this is the list of the names that were covered in the show. And I'll be starting this list off in chronological order, meaning that we're going to start off with the first Supreme, or Ska Hawk. Now, Ska Hawk is a witch that we meet in season 6 of American Horror Story, or American Horror Story Roanoke. And this is by far one of my least favorite pieces of American Horror Story lore. I think her connection to the Coven feels very disjointed and it doesn't feel very organic. But for those unfamiliar with Ska Hawk, this is a witch who came over from England. Now, I won't debate her origin. She might be Scottish, she might be Irish, but in the story that we get from Matt, this is a witch who was a stowaway on a ship. When she arrived to the New World, she was accused of bringing bad weather and causing casualties. And as a result, the colonizers decided that she needed to die for her crimes of being a stowaway. And so they attempted to unalive her. Ska Hawk was smarter and she worshipped stronger gods, because Ska Hawk, unbeknownst to the colonizers, was a druid. So she prayed to those gods and sacrificed, and they bestowed her some gifts. And once Ska Hawk managed to secure her freedom, she escaped out into the woods and then started to blend what she had from her old country with that of the new country and developed this new brand of magic. So by all accounts, Ska Hawk is an originator. And as a result, Ska Hawk's magic is the one that the girls from Salem still practice. Now, on an aside, it makes more sense to me that somebody like Siobhan would have been the person who gave the girls from Salem their magic. I digress. Moving on to the next Supreme on our list. The next Supreme we have on our list is Prudence Ma. Now, we don't have much information about Prudence Ma, but what we do know is that she was the Supreme that was reigning during the Salem witch trials. She's also the Supreme that participated in the Sacred Taking. Now, for those unfamiliar with the Sacred Taking, this is a ritual that forces the Supreme, or that compels the Supreme, to unalive themselves in order to identify a new Supreme. And the reason that Prudence had to partake in the Sacred Taking was because she had contracted consumption, and this was slowly unaliving her. As a result, she needed somebody who could get her girls to safety. So once she finished this ritual, a new Supreme was elected, and that would be the Supreme that would take the girls down to New Orleans. Now, the next Supreme on our list is Maryann Warden. It is very unlikely that this is the Supreme that followed Prudence Ma. There was likely one or two in between the two of them. We just don't know their names. But Maryann reigned during the Civil War, and this makes her reign one of the more contentious, in my opinion, because this was a very racially charged time. But Maryann's most prolific contributions to the Coven include creating Miss Robichaux's as we know it. Now, the school was previously established as a finishing school, but she bought it, refurbed it, and made it into a school where witches could go and learn about their history and grow their powers. I'm not sure if that was only exclusive to a certain type of witch. This is something that will always make me question her reign in particular, but what we do know, in addition to Maryann starting Miss Robichaux's, was that she was an insanely wealthy socialite, and in my opinion, it's very likely she would have rubbed elbows with somebody like Delphine Lalaurie, and possibly came across Marie Laveau. Now, the next Supreme in line is Mimi Delong. Again, there's likely going to have been at least another Supreme in between her and Maryann. We don't know much about Mimi either, but I do know if there was a show set in the 20s, she would be the baddest witch. Look at that back, just a stunning figure altogether. But we don't have much on Mimi Delong, but it's very likely that this was the Supreme that was reigning during the time of the Axemen, so that 1920s era. I'm also not sure if Mamie Gummer's character that we meet during that episode of Coven was the one who would later go on to become Mimi Delong, but there is a very interesting fact that ties Mimi Delong to another famous woman from season 1, and that's Constance Langdon. Now, a lot of people speculate, myself included, that Constance, her daughter Adeline, and Tate are witches. I'm not sure if they're distant relatives of Mimi or if they're direct descendants of her, but if you look at Constance and Adeline in particular, they display some gifts that might make you look twice at their actions. I always thought that was a really interesting piece of lore. You guys let me know what you think about that, and now we'll get on to the next Supreme on our list. Now, the next Supreme on our list is Annalee Leighton. This image here is from American Horror Story's Dollhouse, and so the version that we meet at first is the version that Fiona unalives in Coven, but I think this is a more dignified version. Now, what's prolific about Annalee's contributions to the Coven is that she was the one who made the truce with Marie Laveau, and this is something that established those boundaries between the Coven and the Voodoo House. Aside from that, though, we don't know much about her. What we do know is that she was really well liked and really well respected. The next Supreme on the list is Fiona Good. Now, Fiona Good is by far the most iconic Supreme on this list of witches. and either you love to hate her or you hate to love her. Fiona Good to me is best described as an anti-hero. By all accounts, this is a villain, but she's a charismatic villain. And despite the viewpoints that we get in Coven, this is somebody who was definitely feared and well respected. Or maybe just feared. We may never know. Now, Fiona's contributions to her coven may not seem obvious at first, because this was somebody whose reign was marked by a selfishness. However, she probably has one of the most important contributions of any Supreme on this list, and that's because Fiona Good, along with Marie Laveau, got rid of the witch hunters, and this was a problem that had been plaguing the coven for centuries. And this was only something that could be completed by someone like Fiona and Marie Laveau. The next Supreme on the list is the darling daughter of the previous Supreme, Cordelia Fox. Now, this is a very odd occurrence in the Coven's history because up until this point, there were no mother-daughter duos, which makes this a very special occasion. Now, Cordelia was somebody who was well liked, but by all accounts, a dark horse, someone who was completely unexpected, and her best contribution to the Coven was bringing it to the light and growing it. Sadly, this would come with some huge consequences and would indirectly start an apocalypse. The last Supreme on our list wields the power of time itself, and she's so powerful that the only person who could rival her is the original Supreme herself that we know of. In fact, she's the only Supreme capable of going back and forward in time, and she's so powerful she was able to defeat the Antichrist. Sadly, her reign was deleted, but I assume we'll see her again in the future, and that is Mallerie. Mallerie, much like the other Supremes, is a descendant of Salem, but she's a bit more special because she started manifesting gifts that were unique even to witches, and much like a scene straight out of The Exorcist, her family found her while she was floating 6 feet above her bed. Call it wild. But anyways, tell me who your favorite Supreme is, drop your thoughts in the comments, and I will see you guys in my next video. It's very